Right, great. So all the engine panels have now come back. Engine cases rather have come back from the blast cleaners, looking great. Should be a photo coming up soon of those. And so now they're all back. I've given them, I've washed them all out. Given them a really good wash, and I used horrible stuff, but brake cleaner, either brake cleaner or carb cleaner, to clear out all the oilways, etc., on the cases to get rid of all those bead blasting residue. And when I come to do the cases, I'll clean them again, and we'll also be cleaning out the threads, all the threads on all the cases. Okay, and we'll also probably be using horrible brake cleaner and to clean the crankshaft. I say horrible because it really has it's a very, very strong smell. What's the word? Like chemical. If you don't use it inside, I'm not joking. I use it outside and it nearly knocks me out using it outside. I'm not joking. It's horrible, strong stuff, but it does work. Right. So we're on to the crankshaft. What's happening now is I'm going to go through all the engine parts, work out what needs to be done, taken to the engineers, and start ordering and take that down and start ordering parts so we're all ready to rebuild. What I try and do is order as many parts as I can before the rebuild. Then I'm on, and I'm not waiting for parts all the time. Okay, so crankshaft. I'm going to be inspecting the journals in a minute. So we've got three big end journals, which is where the conrods go, and two main bearing journals, okay, which the crankshaft runs on, together with the timing side bearing and the drive side roller bearing, ball bearing race. So there are four main bearings on a Trident, one roller bearing, one ball bearing race, and two plain main bearings. And it's the plain main bearings that we'll be looking at. Now, I think that looking at the shells, that the crank has been reground at some point, and it's down to -20. So it's had 20 thou taken off the journals. I'll be checking that in a minute, and I'll be checking whether we need to grind it back down again, or whether we can just get away with polishing it or honing it just to get rid of any imperfections on the journals. Come on, focus. Yes. Anyway, but I'll be looking at that. Now, the first thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to clean out the oilways in the crankshaft. There are three oilways in the crankshaft. What happens is the oil in the engine comes up through the engine cases, and it comes to the main bearings. That's where the oil comes from the oil pump. It comes straight up to the two plain main bearings. That's where it goes to first. And then we've got the two oil drillings in the main bearing, and so the oil goes round the actual main bearing and then through that hole, and there are drillings which then take the oil. The next place it goes to is to the three big ends. So there are internal drillings. If you look, there's like a straight line. So there's a drilling that goes from the center of the main bearing to the that's a big end. Let's get this right. No, that's right. There's one drilling that goes there from that main bearing to this, from this main bearing across to that big end, and it comes out there. Okay, so that takes the oil from the main bearing to that big end. Then there's another drilling which goes, what's the best way of seeing this? Get the angles right. There we go, that's probably the best bet. It goes from that main bearing across, from this, here's the main bearing. God, I'm getting totally confused here. From this main bearing, it goes up to that big end and down to that big end. So there's another drilling starting there, and that goes down across the crankshaft to there. So the oil can go from the main bearing to those big ends. So the first thing to realize is, of course, that there's one main bearing, this one on the left, which is feeding 2 big ends, and this main bearing on the right, on the drive side, which is on our right, only feeds 1 big end. So immediately we can see there's more oil going to this big end than to those 2 big ends. So what you can do is, on racing bikes and that, you can do another drilling. I'm just trying to work out where it would be. I can't, because that's too much for me to work out. It's probably, it'll be, I don't know where the drilling will be. Oh, blimey, I'm stuck on that one. But there is, you can drill another oil way so that you've got even oiling, so that this main is feeding that big end, this main is feeding that big end, and both mains are feeding the center big end. I think that's what it is. But to be honest, that's really only necessary on race bikes that are doing 8,000 revs hour after hour. Yeah, I mean, if you're doing 4,000 or 5,000 revs, which is high, even then, you're not going to have any problems. So I wouldn't. It's probably very expensive. I've never had it done. I don't know anyone who's had it done, so I wouldn't worry about having that 4th or 3rd oil way drilled. Okay, but the first thing we need to do is to clean out these oil ways. So we've got 3 plugs. We've got a plug here at the end of that oil way drilling. Yeah, we've got another drilling here that goes there, and then another drilling that goes there. So there's a drilling for each big end, basically. And now, so what we need to do is we need to take the plugs out. There's little grub screws, right? And we need to take those plugs out. I'll see if I can put this on. Yeah, that might be better with the. Yeah, there's grub screws down at the end, obviously, of end of each oil way, and they're in very, very tight, and they're very hard to get out. But we need to get them out because we want to clean the oil ways to make sure there's no sludge, because there is, unlike a twin, there is no sludge trap on a triple crankshaft. There's no sludge trap, so any sludge just sits in that oil way. Look, we've got a nice view through to see that. Nice and clear. Anyway, we need to clear those oil ways out. However, I've done I've had a look and discovered, of course, that this engine has had quite a bit of work on it in the past, and not only has the crank already been reground 20, but some lovely person, and I do say lovely person, has already replaced those horrible grub screws with hex grub screws, which, because the original ones are just like for a flat blade screwdriver, and often what they do, they put them in and then they preen them over, with a punch. Crikey, and sometimes they're a complete nightmare to get out. So I'm very glad to say, I've just loosened this off already, I'm very glad to say that all the oil ways are already, whoops, get my finger out of the way, they're all, I'm trying to do left hand now, they're already been replaced with these grub screws. So we're going to take the grub screws out now, and then we'll see how much sludge we've got in here. But to be honest, I'm not expecting that much, if any, because of course clearly it's already been cleaned out at some point, which is why we now have lovely grub screws in. Okay, so oops, there's a little grub screw, and there's 3 of them. So we're going to take I'm going to take them all out, and then we'll have a look, and we'll clean out the oil ways, both with brushes and with that dreaded brake cleaner, to make sure it's absolutely clear. But as I say, to be honest, I'm not expecting much sludge in there, because obviously they've been done pretty recently. I mean, often the fact that these have been replaced, obviously it means that the crankshaft's been cleaned out at some point. Right, so I'm just going to go off camera. I'm going to take the remaining grub screws out, and then we'll clean out. Then we'll have a look, see what sludge we've got in those oil ways. Okay, I've got the plugs out, and so I'm just going to run this first oil way. I'm doing handheld camera so we can get a better look at what we're doing. So just shoving that down there, and that goes down to the centre of the main bearing and joins up with that oil hole there. Yeah, not too bad. Oh, and what I'll do next is then we'll get the horrible gunge and blow the blow it out. Right, second oil way. And again, that goes through and joins this main bearing here. Yeah, again, not much there. There's a bit there, but nothing there, sort of major. Oh, actually got a little bit of gunge. Hey, hurrah! That makes me feel better. There's a little tiny bit of gunge coming out of that main bearing. Right, and then the last hole on this side. That could be blocked. What's name doesn't want to go in. Yeah, I think we. Oh, yeah, there's definitely something in there. Yeah, this bloody thing keeps refocusing all the time. Yeah, so there's definitely something being in there. So that's definitely worth clearing out, that one. I'm just going to put the camera down and carry on cleaning for a bit. Right, yeah, there's definitely a bit of gunge in there, but of course most of what I thought was gunge is in fact the remains of my brush. You can see the bristles should start where my finger is, and the brush, a bit old now, has disintegrated. So most of what I thought was gunge is in fact the bristles off my oilway brush. I think I need a new set. But you know, there is obviously gunge in there, so you know, always good to clear it out, whatever. A bit of oil coming out. So yeah, we'll just clear these out. Oh, hang on a minute, I've got the workman. I better go and see the workman. Hang on. Right, so I've got some brake cleaner, and I've got the damn, I can't see what I'm doing with this camera. I'm going to have to try and hold it there, but I bet I'm going to get my finger over the lens anyway. I can see what I'm doing now, but my finger's near the lens. Right, so I've got the crankshaft, got my horrible stuff, obviously outside, and then I'm just going to spray. And you can see that it's puffing out of the oilways. So yeah, just giving it a really good spray down through all the oilways. Drive any gunge in there that is in there out. Get it all nice and clean. Try not to get brake cleaner on this bearing because I want oil on that bearing, and the brake cleaner will strip oil, you know, off absolutely anything, and then you know, that'll do the bearing. I think you'll end up with my finger over the lens. Just, oh God, so difficult to hold this camera you have to stand without covering the lens. Right, there we go. and then this one. There and there, and so that's all the oil waste cleaned out, and so we can get it back in. I'll check I've got some oil on that bearing, that roller bearing, and then we can just check the all the journals and things. Right, I'm now checking the crank journals. The first thing I want to do is to check that how much they have been ground. They've been reground. So I've got these are the shells, and I've got a big end shell and a main bearing shell, the one out of the engine, and so the main bearing shell on says they're 10 thou undersize, and then the big end shell also says, when it will focus, 10 thou undersize. So it would seem that all the journals have had a 10,000 regrind on them. So then just to confirm that, so I've got my caliper and digital caliper, which is flashing because the battery is about to go, but it works, just flashes a bit. So I'll do this with one hand. Of course it won't work with one hand, but never mind. So that's one of the big ends. Let's have a look. It's definitely almost very difficult to do this with one hand, but I'm trying. Right, so that's showing 1.616, and if I look at the big end in the manual, workshop manual, big end journal diameter 162. So yeah, so we're 161. Yeah, we're almost exactly 10 thou under the larger measurement. Yeah, 161. Yeah. Okay, and then we've got the main bearing. Again, I'll try it with one hand. It's not going to be very accurate, but I'll try it. And that's coming out at 1916. And so then I've got the yeah, what was it? Much of the way to myself here. Center main bearing journal 1917 to 19175. So yeah, we're about on for the we're on about 10 thou regrind, although the mains seem a bit smaller than maybe they should be, but it's difficult to tell just doing a handheld vernier measurement. But they've been reground, so they look okay, but I don't know, but there is some scoring. There's enough scoring here that I can, on this main bearing, I can just catch my nail on it. Yeah, and on this main as well, I can just catch my nail on it just very slightly. The big ends aren't so bad. So what I'm going to do is I shall take the crankshaft down to the engineers and see what they think. They'll measure it up properly using their proper micrometers and so on, and we'll either just hone or like polish the journals just to get rid of the scratching if they think they can. Otherwise, if they think they can't do that, then we'll have them reground to another 10 so the journals will be 20 thou smaller than standard. The thing is with polishing is, of course, if you over polish or over hone, then you're going to end up with a loose big end, which is the last, or main bearing, the last thing you want, because once it's loose, then it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. It's got to be absolutely dead tight. So but they'll measure it and they'll work out whether we can just get away with a polish or whether we need to go for another regrind. Yeah, there's just a lip there. Okay, but I'll take it down to engineers and really I'll take their advice. I think we might just get away with polishing, but I'll see what they say. And that's kind of the crankshaft done. I'm going to put the oil plugs back in. I've put some, I'll be using this all the time. I've got some assembly lube, and I've put that on that main bearing. We'll be using assembly lube, very, very, very important, using this all the way through reassembly. We're not going to use oil, ordinary engine oil, because it very slowly runs off. Now this engine, when's it first going to be run? It could be months, it could even be years, because I'm going to rebuild it. That's going to take a while. Then I'm going to give it back to the owner who's abroad. Then at some point he's going to get around to putting it back in the bike and so on. So it could be an awful long time before this engine is actually run after we've finished rebuilding it. So the assembly lube, it's sticky as opposed to like engine oil. So this will stay on all the journals and so on in the engine until such time as it's started. So never ever just rely on putting engine oil back on all the bearings, especially plain bearings, etc. Use assembly lube. This is Lucas. It could be any make, as long as it is assembly lube, because it's designed to stick and stay there until the engine started, which could be months, could be years. Okay, so vitally important to do that. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the grub screws back in, but I'm not going to really over tighten them, because we need to clean out the crankshaft again when it comes back from the engineers, because they're either going to polish it, give it a light hone, or we're going to regrind. Either way, we need to clean out those oilways again when it comes back, to make sure there's no swarf or whatever in the oilways. So I'm not going to put them in massive now, just semi-tight, just so they don't get lost, and then we'll clean everything out when it's back from the engineers, and then put them in properly, and we'll cover that obviously when it comes to the time.